This beautiful piece is called the Earle of Salisbury, and you probably know that if you're already watching this or you've seen the title here. This was a piece originally written back in 1612 or so by William Byrd, who was one of the most popular composers of the day. There was Thomas Tallis and Orlando Gibbons. These were all kind of Shakespeare's time. And Byrd wrote mostly for vocal stuff, a lot of chorale stuff, and the virginal, which was an ancestor of the harpsichord, worked on a similar principle of keys that hit strings and were plucked strings. And so this is a keyboard piece that is now commonly played on the guitar, commonly played on pianos and everything else, all kinds of modern instruments. And this version I first heard this on a record by John Renbourn. And when I was a teenager, I happened to pick up this book when it was pretty much brand new, back when books like this had cost $2.95. You can see the price here in the corner. And was just fascinated by this piece that was on one of his early albums. Was it Lady? No, it was Sir John Alot or Lady and the Unicorn. One of those. Doesn't matter. But his arrangement of the piece really captures the spirit of what Byrd was trying to do. Now, this is a pavane, which was a dance style of the day that was you always read about it's very slow and stately and moves. It's a very gentle, formal kind of dance that was done back then. And so there are lots and lots of famous pavanes. I'm not going to play anymore right now. But anyway, and the piece was dedicated to Robert Cecil, who was an advisor to a couple of British monarchs, Elizabeth I, and then her successor, James, who James I it was, and he was James the Sixth of Scotland. But anyway, so Cecil, I believe, died in 1612, and I believe this piece was written then in his honor, and he was the first Earl of Salisbury in the fifth incarnation of the title. Okay, enough, blah, 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 blah. But the piece is a great example of multiple voices being able to be done by a single instrument. Now, you couldn't do this very accurately on a flute or a clarinet or an oboe. Violin can probably do it because it can play multiple parts. But there are a lot of times in this piece where we're really trying to keep three separate voices going on independently. So we hear that one melody with a second melody. Then the first melody has a little flurry of notes, while the second melody is holding this F. Then that high B rings, and and the second voice kind of answers it. And this what makes this piece so challenging, is making sure that all those parts sound independent, not like this. They have to overlap and sound as if they're being done by separate instruments. And so that requires a lot of very meticulous fingering with the left hand in terms of holding notes as long as you need to so that they sustain until that voice continues. So we are going to break this down into every measure by measure. The whole thing is only 16 measures long, 2 8-measure sections, both of which are repeated. And something that's very unusual about pavanes and pieces of the day is they were frequently paired. This was paired with a couple of galliards, which are slightly quicker dances done in 3/4 time, or in beats of 3, and this is in 4. But the piece just anyway, where I was going was that what's unusual about this piece, one of the unusual things, is that usually in pieces like this there would be an 8-measure phrase that was then played back with some variations, ornamentation, different embellishments, maybe more difficult, technical, faster moving melodies. And this does not happen in this. The first 2 parts, the first section is repeated pretty much exactly, and the second section is repeated exactly. So it makes for, again, very unusual pavane. Okay, we are gonna, again, this is pretty much the way John Renbourn played it, with a couple of minor alterations. I will talk about those as we get through them. And in the music that I've printed out, I've included all of the left-hand fingering in sort of normal classical stuff. I know that most of you rely on tablature to look at things, but this is a really important part of learning classical pieces, is paying extra close attention to the fingering. And we'll even talk about some of the some options you have in various places. You could try this, you could try that. There was a time where I played a note, I played a chord, a little F chord here, well, it's anyway, and then flattened out my third finger to get a note on the second string. And that was in the interest of hanging on to a note on the third string and letting it continue to ring, and there was not really another finger available to do that. So, okay, enough chit-chat. Let's get into the Earle of Salisbury. Well, this piece is, on one hand, doesn't seem technically too difficult. Nonsense. It is really, this is fairly advanced in terms of getting every note crystal clear and to get it to ring for the duration that William Byrd had in mind. Much easier to do on a keyboard than on the guitar with these overlapping voices. But even if you can't hold all those notes as long as you need to, it will sound okay. So this is a good, it's a good challenge for intermediate guitar players. And if it doesn't quite come out, if it comes out a little messy, slow it down and really put a lot of time and effort into every single measure. Don't just start playing through it from top to bottom and let each measure be close and then just do it again from the top. This is really worth work, and that's why I broke it down into at least 4-measure phrases. But I would say put your attention into every single measure. Now, some measures should be easy. Okay. That's probably one of the least challenging parts of this song. The next measure is a lot trickier. Do that 100 times. And just stop right there. Keep practicing getting through a whole measure and up to the first beat of the next measure. This is really important. In order to hear how the phrasing is all going to work, you don't want to be doing stuff like, let me see if I can even do this. This and saying, okay, I'm going to do that again. Again, that is about the easiest measure in the song, I'm guessing. Maybe not. There are a few others that are not too difficult. But you got to get used to hearing the end of that thought. Now, that's what you practice. 5 beats. All of measure 1 and beat 1 of measure 2. Okay, as that starts smoothing out, then tackle measure 2, starting with that E chord. Up to the D chord, the first chord of measure 3. That measure is 10 times more complicated than the first measure because we finally hear some independent movement of voices. And you got to hear all of those things from all angles. Then we work on this measure of D. That's it. Work on those 5 beats. Make sure that when you play that little bass part, those 3 notes come out clear while the high A is ringing. And then it moves down to the G sharp and resolves to the A. This measure is also measure 4, very easy. Okay, then work on that pickup note in this case. And get just to that first beat of, I guess, what measure am I in now? 5, 6. So that would be measure 5. And make sure that F stayed on the whole time. Okay, so these are all the things I addressed in each individual segment as we're going through there. But that's the approach that I think you really need to take with this, is treat every measure as like a separate chapter in this book that you're trying to master. So, okay, I think that is most of my thoughts on... Oh, no, it's not. I have one last thought, and I really recommend, I hope to get to a lesson on this. I'm going to hope to get to a lesson on that, maybe even very soon. One of my favorite songwriters, as many of you might know, is Al Stewart, and he wrote a song based on this chord progression called The Palace of Versailles, and it's on Time Passages. So be sure to listen to that, because he took this tune, William Byrd's progression, and wrote a historical song about the French palace and French Revolution and all kinds of stuff, as Al does, writes things. So also want to steer you towards listening to Al's tune, The Palace of Versailles, on Time Passages. Change the key, just because he had to put in a key he could sing in it, but you could hear that chord progression: E minor, A minor, D, 7, G major 7, C, to A minor, to B7. Even the second section. Anyway, but I digress, like always. Hope you enjoyed this lesson and have fun playing the Earle of Salisbury.